With development pressures, climate change and declining space for connectivity across the Greater Sydney Basin and beyond, there is an increasing need for restorationists, plant producers, planners and landscape architects to collaborate on ensuring natives of the correct provenance and genetics are conserved as well as planted within urban spaces.
The next presenter we have up is Sam Craigie from Greening Australia. Sam is a remarkable woman, worked in restoration, seed production for many years, and she's one of a group of really influential and vibrant, really positive women working in our sector, and Lord knows we need that. It's great to see lots of ladies and blokes in the audience today, but Sammy's going to lead the charge today, and of course we've got Katie and Marie following up later, so thanks Sammy.
Hi. Firstly, I just wanted to say thanks to ARBA and to AMPC for the invitation to talk today. It's a topic that I'm really passionate about, native seed management. The seed work is particularly important in highly modified landscapes, such as the Cumberland Plain, if we want to be able to conserve and enhance our biological and genetic heritage, and also to share our spaces with other non-human species. The first slide, I'll just talk to it just really quickly because it's what I'm most proud of. It's yellow burr daisy. You can see it there in its mature form in our seed production area at the top. You can see it in seed production and the little brown bits down the middle of the seed. And then in the bottom left, a picture of the seed itself, and then on the right, its first little germinate. So today I'll be talking about the practical doing part of environmental management in the Sydney Basin. Like all places, it has unique challenges and opportunities, and I'll be providing an insight into how we approach seed supply for species-rich direct seeding of endangered ecological communities, with particular attention to the ground layer flora. So we're looking at what makes it possible, what are the challenges, and what can and has been achieved. So, although we're talking about seed, my first slide is about people. People are actually what helps make this achievable. It's what has made the seed supply and direct seeding work possible. No organisation can do this work on its own. I won't read out the list, but the point is that we can't separate people from the landscape. The people listed here have contributed by providing funding, providing identification and locating source populations for the initial wild seed collection as a base for the SPA, access to land for seed collection and restoration work, seed supply, particularly in the early days of our project when we were just building our production, support for projects with in-kind maintenance on restoration sites, academic overlays in our projects, particularly the work of Western Sydney University academics in the fields of genetics and pollinators. Another thing that's made it possible is the Western Sydney seed production area. So everyone here knows that seed is critical for the sustainability of local remnants, and seed production areas provide an opportunity to increase seed supply without negatively impacting these remnants. The SPA has made direct seeding possible. We initiated the SPA around 2012 and spent the first couple of years, 3 or 4 years, scouring the landscape to find small patches to add to our species list. We started, as you can see at the top on the right, with 500 foam boxes. So they were very, very humble beginnings. You know, our seed collections were handfuls. And then incrementally, we've increased it in size to the point where we now have 10,000 square metres of Western Sydney wildflowers, so 1 hectare, and 3.5 hectares of Western Sydney grasses. And we've got a total of about 120 species at the moment. So the SPA could be an entire talk on its own, but in the end I will leave it there and we'll talk to some other factors. So as doing people, I couldn't resist making the point that courage and effort is what's required to get things done. And GA recognised that producing seed was the only way that we could get the scale we required for this restoration approach. It just wasn't available in the landscape. And we know as practical people that doing takes courage and effort. We've been very fortunate to be able to attract really great staff who believe in the work. And this has really enabled us to produce the scale of seed we require. We've required multi-skilled people who are equally at home behind a microscope or on a shovel. So you won't be surprised to find out there's a couple of pages of challenges. Again, I won't go through them all, and in this list there's a mix of challenges from the perspective of seed supply and restoration. But some of the key issues for seed have been access to remnant patches. There's a limited amount of green space on the Cumberland Plain. Where access is possible, patches of native veg are often significantly impacted by weeds and low in species diversity. And these constraints are then compounded when you are trying to access multiple sites so you can maximise the genetic diversity. Local seeds just aren't available off the shelf like exotic pastures are. Another kind of interesting one is triggering seed sets. So not all plants routinely set seed. And some of the issues on the Cumberland Plain that impact this are altered fire regimes, and sometimes a lack of disturbance can actually constrain seed availability. And the last one we talked to here is around establishment timing. So I think a few of the speakers have discussed already how restored areas can be potential collection sites into the future, but we need to make sure that there's a sufficient establishment time so that we're not impacting potential recruitment on those restored sites. Another quick list of challenges. So compared to the cost of exotic pastures, cover crops, native seed is quite expensive, but then compared to the cost of weed management and perpetuity, native seed is actually quite cheap. Collecting and managing native seed is labour intensive, and so there's always a temptation to reduce the species complexity and therefore to reduce the cost. Standards, they cannot be emphasised enough. How will we know if the seed we buy is viable or germinable? How can we compare the quality of one bag of seed to another if we've got no idea about the quality of that seed? Another issue is knowing how widely to collect for a single species. It's quite challenging when there's so little data known on the genetics of individual species and populations. So these are just some of the challenges of managing seed supply for restoration. So another thing I wanted to talk to was the technical development that we've been able to move through over the last sort of 5 to 6 years as we had the seed production area. So you can see at the top left-hand side, we started just testing our seed in nursery trays, and just to give us some understanding of the quality of the seed. It's a little bit crude, but it's also really practical and very effective. At least told us whether the seed was viable and whether it was contaminated. So it was a good starting point. We test at multiple points in our processes. So we test at the start, so before we've used that seed, and that's what the nursery testing there was for. But we also test while we're doing the work. So when we've developed the seed blends and we've mixed it with the carrying agent and we've actually shoveled it into the hopper, we also subsample. We take that material back, put it in flat trays in the nursery, and put that under irrigated conditions to give us some idea of what sort of results we'll get given the right moisture content availability. And then you can see down the bottom, after many years of making do, we were able to purchase a couple of germination cabinets, which was a very big achievement for us. And now we're able to test all our seed under very controlled conditions. So all of this stuff really matters, and it's how we improve over time. Some amazing images of local flora we all know and love. So for each species, there's an image of the seed itself and then an image of the seed germinating, which is an insight into the life of our local plants. I really just put these in because they're really beautiful and because of the work of two members of our team, Jane and Tegan, who are with us today. They spend a lot of time and effort looking down the lens of a microscope to get these images. So it's something that we've been able to learn over time and something that we like to share over time. So more on the people part of what can be achieved, upskilling and capacity building. So the great thing about having a go at things is that you get to learn and you also get to share other people's knowledge. So one of the benefits of seed production from a knowledge base is experiencing our local plant through their whole life cycle. So you can see here on the bottom right, they're plants under propagation. So that's seed So we have two types of collection. We continue to bring in wild collection because we don't want to genetically bottleneck the seed production area. So we have a combination of propagation of wild seed and propagation from seed production area seed. So there's so much to learn about seed. So we use ID books, we use microscopes, imagery, and the practice of doing to constantly improve what we're doing. Good. So just a small note on the restoration outcomes. So over the last 6 years, we've generated 50 hectares of grassy woodland. I just thought it was probably important to note what we do with the seed, because seed's obviously not the end point. And these are two sites, one Bungarraby Reserve, which is a 10 hectare site, and Elizabeth MacArthur, which was a Camden Council 1 hectare site. Yeah, both of those sites are still developing. I mean, it's 2 years on from those photographs there, and they'll continue to increase over time. The Bungarraby site, we were getting about 20 plants a square metre in the first year, and that doubled to 50 plants by 2017, and that's because of all that natural recruitment. So we found even some native grasses, only as high as your hand, were already setting seed, dropping it, and babies were recruiting in. So that's one of the amazing benefits of this type of direct seeding. That's all. Thank you.